Astros and Rangers both get bullied by the broom. We said it couldn't get worse at first. John Singleton says, hold my O'Douls. It's episode 37 of Stone Cold Stros, and it starts right now.
The Houston Astros, world champions!
Hello and welcome into Stone Cold Stros. I'm Brandon Strange, joined by senior content contributor Charlie Palillo. Follow him on Twitter at Palillo and read his weekly column on sportsmap.com. Next to him on screen is sportsmap.com editor Josh Jordan. Follow him on Twitter X at Josh Jordan 975, whatever you want to call it. You can support the channel just by hitting like on this video and subscribe to the channel. We would appreciate you doing that. This full version of the podcast is available right now in audio form at places like Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods. All those links are in the description. Before we get into the news, guys, it's episode 37. Charlie, which Astros player who wore number 37 are we shouting out this week?
Well, we can start with levity. I'm not going with the first guy, but either of you two have a cone head in your Astros memorabilia stash. Charlie Kerfeld wore number 37 in the 80s. But I'm going with Shane Reynolds, who had a very solid Astros career. He's still 8th on their all-time win list with 103. Also a real solid guy. And my Shane Reynolds factoid for you, at the peak stage of his career, he bought a 22,000 square foot mansion down in Sugar Land. Shane Reynolds, also a smart guy, realized he wasn't going to be living that high on the hog forever. Let's downsize a little bit. Sold that 22,000 square foot mansion to Tracy McGrady.
There you go. Also, tip of the cap to Brandon Becky. So, guys, we have reached the players-only team, or the players-only team meeting portion of the spiral. Maldi and some others called it. Outwardly, I know how we feel about Martin Maldonado. I know he garners respect inside the locker room. I've heard a lot of fans say him calling a team meeting and, with the purpose of kind of getting it together seems a little tone deaf. Considering how comprehensive the team is slumping right now, what's the concern level for not just winning the division, but just making the playoffs at all right now?
Well, we have a lot of angles to have at here. I respect the initiative of Maldonado calling the meeting, but aren't there probably players in that clubhouse thinking, hey, if everyone should play better, you stink. You're our worst guy. Why don't you announce your retirement effective immediately if you're that good of a team leader and you want to help out? It was a horrible weekend. I know it was a little on the warm side, but perhaps the Astros should have opened the roof, because is this existential? An open roof really can't cave in on you, right? Because it was Seattle and in the standings and where we are down to the final 37 games of the season starting the week with the Red Sox series, of course it was awful for the Astros. But a 3-game series, one little slice of 162, right? Heading into that series, the Astros had one of the 3 best records in the American League since the All-Star break. So it's a very condensed collapse. The 2019 team, which I think is probably the greatest Astros team of all time once Jordan joined, they got swept in a series at Cincinnati. The Reds were lousy, 75-87 finish. Verlander and Cole started 2 of the 3 games, and they got swept by the Reds. 2021, the Orioles lost 110 games. They swept the Astros in a 3-game series at Minute Maid Park. A.J. Hinch's crappy Detroit Tigers swept the Astros in a series at Minute Maid Park. The Astros went out to Oakland and got swept by an A's team. That was horrific last year. So 3 games, anything can happen. An atrocity of a baseball team can beat a super elite team. Well, the Astros are no longer anywhere close to super elite. They're just another contender. And anyone thinking right now that they're not in serious danger of potentially missing the playoffs entirely, I can appreciate an eternal optimist. You're either an eternal optimist or a fool if you're not acknowledging that, of course, they could miss out. Right? Oh, geez, they blew an opportunity to gain ground on the Rangers. How about they're very fortunate? The Rangers got swept at home by the Brewers, and this is still a relatively close race. The Astros just 2.5 back. And those Seattle Mariners, at whom some scoffed when suggested they could well climb into the race, they have the best-looking, deepest starting pitching. Here they are. And they've absolutely owned the Astros this year. And there is plenty to get to that is not doom and gloom. But coming off the Seattle weekend, what are you going to stick your head in the ground about it? The Astros have lost the season series to the Mariners. 3 games remaining, the last week of the regular season up in Seattle. That series is huge. The Astros have lost the season series to the Toronto Blue Jays. Right? If you're in a wild card tiebreaker with either of those, the Astros are out. Let's throw in as well, the Astros lost the season series to the Minnesota Twins, right? The leader of the crappy American League Central. Well, they won a season series from the Astros. The 5 other teams that right now would join the Astros in the playoffs, the Astros' collective record against them this season is 15-20. They did take 2 out of 3 from Baltimore. They do lead the Rangers 6-4, win one of those 3 in Arlington, where they're probably not going to make the playoffs. But you win at least one of those 3, and hey, you win the season series, and you would hold that tiebreaker over the Rangers, should it come down to that. But this is going to be a furious month and change run, and the Astros are just another ball club, and we can break it down no matter what area of the ball club. There's nothing great about the Astros team anymore.
Yeah, I think it's the look of it too. With Altuve getting thrown out at second and McCormick getting thrown out, the drop pop fly to the pitcher's mound with Bregman. It's just little things where it's sloppy baseball, and that's when it's real obvious to you that you're like, it doesn't look like their heads are in this thing right now. And every pitcher is pretty much awful except for JP France right now. The one positive, it looks like the bullpen's getting better. Stanek and Montero are starting to look a little bit better, but overall, it's sloppy baseball. So I see what Maldonado's talking about, but the other thing that's real obvious is Diaz needs to be playing every day. And with him calling the team meeting, do you ever feel like he's going to get a hit when he comes up to the plate? No. Now the defense, he's a poor defensive catcher. So it's just a bad look all around. But, as Charlie mentioned, it's just one series. They could turn it around here and look great against the Red Sox. And then we're not really talking about this anymore. But the Mariners look like the real deal, and they've been kicking your butt most of this season. So it stings a little bit.
Momentum is something you have until you don't. It can turn on a dime, and all momentum could seem to be against you, and it can, and 180 the same thing. But you look at it, and probably over these next couple of weeks, the Astros are going to fall out of playoff position. Doesn't mean that's where they end up. But while the Astros are scuffling, the Red Sox are surging. They just administered last rites to the Yankees over the weekend. So Boston now is just 3 games back of the Astros, right? And they're 5th in the wild card race. 7 games over the next week and a half, Astros and Red Sox. So the Astros need to stabilize. They need to stabilize now. But unless they really just whip up on the Red Sox, and 3 games at Detroit this weekend, the Tigers aren't good, but they're not the A's or Royals bad. You look at the Mariners, who've won 6 in a row, just skunked the Astros, 14 of their last 17. They're 31-13 in their last 44 games. And the Mariners' next 12 games, they play 3 each against the White Sox, the Royals, the A's, and the Mets. So the Mariners don't reckon to be doing much losing over the next couple of weeks. And they're already at the cusp of slingshotting ahead of the Astros. It's likely to happen, at least in this stretch of schedule. The Astros do have the more favorable schedule once we get past Labor Day, but you need to be in the best position possible to take advantage of that. And whether the Rangers in all this, right? They were 12-4 out of the break. I mean, the Brewers can pitch, and they went in and shut down the Rangers over the weekend. So when Labor Day gets here and the Astros and Rangers play that huge 3-game series in Arlington over the next couple of weeks, maybe it's the second-place Rangers against the third-place Astros, or vice versa in the American League West, both looking up at the Mariners.
Outside of the third inning of that season series finale with Seattle, the offense has been pretty impotent. John Singleton, we mentioned him in the open, doesn't appear to be the answer. He still hasn't cracked the nut of how to hit above 200 at the major league level. And unless Michael Brantley has the most cinematic comeback of the season, there doesn't appear to be any other levers to pull at this point. The guys are just going to have to play better. But Abreu comes back. Even if Michael Brantley does come back, it puts you in a conundrum where, to this point, there's been a clamoring to play Yainer Diaz, who's clearly one of your best offensive players, even though he can't regularly crack the lineup. He's in it a lot more now, but that is because of injury. But Diaz stands to lose playing time if Michael Brantley does return. We don't even know what Michael Brantley is going to look like. How loud, I guess, does the clamoring become to start to get more offense from the guys who are better players. Like, where does Diaz fit in here? Because my thought is that if Abreu comes back and he keeps doing Abreu things from this season, Diaz is still your better option at first, but they're likely not going to do that, right?
The bottom 4 spots in their lineup basically stink. I didn't mean it almost literally when I said a week ago, if Singleton never gets another hit after the 2 home run game. Well, since then, he's 1 for 25, batting 40. Not 140, 40. So whatever combination of Singleton and Myers and Pena and Dubon, Jolks gets a hit in a blowout loss to snap his 0 for 36. Hey, let's start him the next day. And he goes 0 for 4. So whatever combination of those guys, and if Maldonado is in the lineup, it's to the point where it's straight up idiocy. And for those who say it's a fireable offense, I'm really losing strength and trying to hold back the dam of that argument. If the Astros wind up missing the playoffs or lose out and winning the division by a game or 2, it'll be fair to say that if Yainer had taken over the primary catching duties in, say, June, that could well have done it. Right? Maldi's a negative WAR player. Yainer is already over 2. And Maldonado's had a nice career and some real moments here. But the truth is, the harsh truth, the simple truth, nothing but the truth, Maldonado presently stinks at everything. We know offensively he's never been any good. Of course, every once in a while you're going to run into a pitch and hit a home run. Maldonado as an offense is garbage. But his strength, catching Yoda, Menza in a mask, it's to the point, it's absolute BS. Starting the Boston series, team ERA when Yainer catches 3.47, Maldi 4.02. Passed balls, Maldonado successfully defending his major league title from last year. He leads the majors in passed balls. Yainer doesn't have one yet. Okay, Maldi's caught a lot more, but when it's 9-0, Maldonado's caught about 70% of the games. Over 80% of their wild pitches have occurred when Maldonado has been behind the plate. Pitch framing data. Maybe you don't buy into it. Nevertheless, as one more information point, there are 59 catchers who have caught the requisite number of innings to qualify in the rankings of pitch framing, which is how do you move behind the plate, finesse a ball into the strike zone, fool the umpire, whatever you want to call it. Among 59 catchers, Martin Maldonado is 59th, dead last in pitch framing. Yainer's below average. He's not dead last. The Rangers, by the way, have 2 of the top 3 in pitch framing, and Jonah Heim, and then the guy they acquired while Heim was injured at the deadline, Austin Hedges. And then there's the one-loss record. When Yainer Diaz, right, boil it all down, just win, baby, right? That's the name of the game. If Maldi's so freaking indispensable behind the plate, well, with Yainer as the starting catcher, they are 21-10. With Maldi, they are 47-43. It's an absolute mismatch. It's just stupid. It's stubborn. And frankly, it's to the point where maybe Jim Crane himself needs to tell Dusty, look, Yainer catches 3 out of every 4 games once someone else is playing first base. Or forget the 1-year contract extension. We'll take it year by year. Let's take it month by month. And September 1st, we'll have someone else calling these shots. Because Dusty's position on Maldonado and the arguments that he makes, they're all just absurd now.
Yeah, and it's nice with Maldi. He gets to have it both ways, right? It's, if the pitcher's terrible, then it's the pitcher's fault that day. But if the pitcher throws a no-hitter, it's like, well, yeah, he had Maldi back there. That's why he threw the no-hitter.
Yeah, meanwhile, the other 9 starts, or the other 8 starts, including that no-hitter, make it 9 starts, ERA of 5.82 for Framber Valdez. Absolute bullseye, Josh.
Yep.
When things go great, it's because of Maldi. When things go wrong, it's because, well, everyone else has let them down.
Yeah, like yesterday. Oh, we got to have Maldi in there because Framber's temperament. He might kind of lose focus. Or how did that help them yesterday? That didn't work well at all. The biggest improvement you can make on this team is to put in Yainer in for Maldi, because then you get a plus offensive player replacing a terrible offensive player, and he's better on defense too. That would make a huge jump in this lineup, but we'll see if Dusty does it. He hasn't shown that he's going to do it yet.
Yeah, one more data point just to complete the picture on Yainer versus Maldi behind the plate. Throwing out opposing base stealers or would-be base stealers. Again, starting the Boston series, Yainer has thrown out 11 of 32. 34%. That's a good number. 11 of 32. Maldi has caught 11 of 72. That's 15%. There's a much better chance of Maldi bouncing the throw than there is of him throwing out a would-be base stealer. I mean, there is zero coherent, legitimate point to Maldonado even catching a third of the games at this point, other than if you feel, well, Yainer, since we have not played him enough during the course of the season, he'd wear down more quickly. One other thing about Yainer, I'm not suggesting he's ever going to contend for the stolen base title, but that big man moves. Yeah. For a catcher, he runs really well, whereas Maldonado, we know, has like two pianos strapped to his back.
Well, Josh, to your point on Maldi being the one to kind of guide Fromber and his temperament behind the plate, it sure looked like J-Rod had the more control over Fromber's temperament in the finale. Guys, that's going to be it for part 1 of Stone Cold Stros. To listen to the full podcast, it's up right now at your favorite podcast provider, and you can watch the rest of the conversation right here on YouTube. Just go to the Stone Cold Stros playlist, and we'll be releasing those videos very shortly. And as always, go Stros.